Hi all, and welcome back to another episode with me, Sarah, the Millennial Cynic. Thanks again for joining me as today I take a look at the idea of single incomes in a full employment economy and why I feel we need to change how we think about wages and income. Now, I'm not going to lie, some of what I'm about to discuss today might be considered fanciful or pie in the sky. I know this, but still, no harm in talking about it and seeing what can possibly be done to ease the working burden for everyone. Okay, so the first thing we need to talk about is how painfully little we get for our hard work these days. Only a generation or two ago, a single income could not only buy a house, but also fund a decently sized family. Nowadays, two incomes can barely, if even, afford a home, never mind children. We are now doing twice as much work for far less reward. What used to be possible on one income is now out of reach even with two incomes. And things just seem to be getting worse, what with the rising inflation, rising costs of living, and the seemingly inevitable recession coming down the tracks. The only hope you have nowadays of buying a home, any home, is with a partner to pool your resources together in the hopes that the mortgage gods will smile on you and grant you approval. One income alone is next to useless, unless of course you're in the top 1% of earners, which of course feck all are. So single people and those families with a stay-at-home parent or carer or someone unable to work due to illness or disability are effectively excluded from home ownership, when not that long ago this wasn't really an issue. Those couples who do manage buying a home often have to restrict the number of children they have as childcare is also exorbitant. And this is with two incomes. Often one parent is working simply to pay for the childcare with maybe a little bit left over. And as broken as the housing market is at the moment, childcare is not that far behind. Creche places cost an arm and a leg, yet the staff themselves, who now must be qualified to a high standard, earn next to nothing. It is becoming an unsustainable business, and yet it remains such a vital service for so many. Pandemic life over the past 2 years has thrown into sharp relief for many that working just isn't worth it. What you get in return is getting smaller and smaller while you work harder and harder. Hence the great resignation and certain industries crying out for staff. People started realising that they were not being valued and that, you know what, they enjoyed being at home to raise their children themselves. So more and more people around the world have said enough and are trying to figure out ways of living on a single income again. And this is where I feel we should stop chasing full employment and start focusing on what's best for people and families. 4-day work weeks are now being trialled in many countries around the world, Ireland included, whereby you'll earn 100% of your pay for 80% of the work. The hope is that this arrangement will have 3 beneficiaries: the employee, the employer, and the environment. It is hoped that it will help to avoid burnout for employees by offering more downtime, that it will offer greater productivity for the employer as the employee works to fit their weekly tasks into 4 days, and that it will help the fight against climate change as less commuting is needed. The fabled win-win-win scenario. I do sincerely hope this becomes the norm, as aside from wages not going as far as they used to compared to a single income in years past, time management is also a huge issue with full employment. If both partners are working full time, then there is less time in the week for them to have downtime, as their evenings are filled with the household chores that can't be done while both are working. Add in commute times and this window to keep a household ticking over becomes even smaller, and that again eats into any downtime you hope to have. Less time to de-stress in front of the telly or with a good book. Weekends are often scheduled to the hilt to maybe get a head start on next week's chores, or to take full advantage of the precious little quality time they have with each other, their children, their families and friends. We need this downtime, Otherwise, we are just working to survive and not to live. Burnout is a very real issue for today's workforce, especially with the always online mentality that causes your working day to bleed into your off time. So for me, a 4-day work week is the first step towards a healthier work-life balance for so many. But I personally feel a trick was missed when women entered the workforce en masse. Instead of women taking up full-time employment and men continuing with full-time employment, we should have maybe moved to a system of every job is now part-time as standard. In that way, 2 part-time incomes combine to make 1 single income, with the benefits being the shared workload, more downtime for both, and less need and reliance on childcare. It could also help limit how far house prices can rise, as buying power for all would be reduced. Now, this is the fanciful thinking I was talking about earlier. I know this. This is definitely pie-in-the-sky, idealised stuff with obvious problems. Obviously, there are many problems with an arrangement like this. For example, single people would be at the same disadvantage they are now unless they kept working full-time. And if full-time jobs were still available, then nothing really would stop people from naturally moving to both partners working full-time to earn more to try and get ahead. But in theory, I do still like the idea. It may never be possible, but hopefully if there is a concerted effort to move to a 4-day work week, it might help some way towards creating a more sustainable work-life balance with far less burnout and stress. But for me, there is one more thing that should be implemented alongside a 4-day work week. It is something that could be a good substitute for the part-time jobs idea I just spoke about, and it could help deflate the housing market back to more reasonable prices. Now, obviously, massive amounts of housing still needs to be built. That's the big issue with housing right now. There's not enough houses. But the house prices are still mad and we need to bring them back to normal, back to affordable. So for me, my idea would be that, simply put, we should only take 1 income into account when granting mortgage approval. Now, this will need a massive correction of the overpriced housing market and would likely need extra rules to support it, like not allowing investors to bid against first-time buyers or those looking for a primary residence. But I do think it would go a long way towards helping to fix the housing market and also to reduce the burden on everyone when it comes to work. If one person is struggling or falls ill, then their partner could step in and become the breadwinner for a while with no downside. Couples could rotate who works this year, or after drawing down the mortgage, both could work part-time, like I suggested earlier. Maybe not so pie in the sky after all. Other benefits of only allowing a single income to be used for mortgage purposes would be that single people would now actually have a shot at owning their own home, or households with a carer or a person with a disability who cannot work a regular job. It would allow more people a chance to buy a home, and this, to me, is only a good thing. I sincerely hope that the studies and trials of the 4-day work week do show a benefit to everyone, so that we can maybe move towards a better, fairer system, so that we can start appreciating life again. For too many, the grind is becoming too much, and we need to do what we can to stop this continuing and getting worse. And hopefully, we can move towards a fairer way to reward workers with an achievable goal of home ownership. Anyway, thanks for listening to my musings, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you liked what you heard, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more from me. Thanks again for listening, guys. Until next time, slán go fóill.